As you say, and as you're hinting at, criminal defense attorneys generally do not advise their clients to testify in their own defense, especially in a case like this. Sam Bankman-Fried, though, is not a traditional client. And as we know, anyone who's followed this story knows that he spent a lot of the weeks after the fall of FTX, and even after his own arrest, giving interviews, talking to pretty much anyone under the sun, saying all kinds of sort of half-cocked, probably legally ill-advised things, including that he, effed up. And I'm quoting there. And so again, this is not a traditional client, and we're probably not going to see a traditional defense or traditional testimony from him.
What have we seen so far? I mean, has the testimony been so damning that putting himself on the stand, or that a lawyer putting him on the stand, is the best the defense team can do?
I mean, I think, again, I'm not on the jury, and so it's always hard to speculate, but it has seemed from the outside to be pretty damning. I mean, we've seen basically his closest friends and senior executive team all get up there on the stand and talk, not just in detail, saying that yes, the crimes that the state is charging did occur, Sam Bankman-Fried did them, but producing essentially mountains of evidence showing Bankman-Fried's direct involvement. So we've seen messages, we've seen Google Docs, we've seen these very specific accounts, particularly from Caroline Ellison, who was the CEO of Alameda Research, that was Bankman-Fried's hedge fund, and his ex-girlfriend. They produced this kind of chain of balance sheets that Sam Bankman-Fried was very active in. So, it has not looked good for the defense.
What has been his, I guess, defense in this? What's he claiming, or I don't know.
Well, he already told us he effed up.
There are aspects of the defense that look like a traditional white-collar defense. A lot of times in white-collar defense is what the person who's accused will try to do is present as very complicated. There's a lot of ins, a lot of outs. This is, complicated stuff, and I was doing my best, didn't mean to commit fraud. There is some of that here, but there's also been an effort to essentially blame everybody other than him. And that's the part that I'd say is probably legally, less well advised. He spent a lot of time in interviews ahead of this, and we've seen some of this come out during the trial, essentially blaming Caroline Ellison for the fraud, or blaming his lawyers, or blaming outside counsel, and so on. And again, it hasn't seemed especially credible because the prosecutors have been able to produce emails and so on showing that he was very involved. And also, it's not exactly a good look when the CEO is saying, oh, no, this is just my underling's fault, especially the CEO who at one time, had personally enriched himself to the extent that Sam Bankman-Fried had done so. We've learned of $1 billion in personal loans, $300 million in luxury real estate, and the list kind of goes on and on.
Is there any chance, and I don't know that this matters in terms of this current court decision, but is there a chance that people who lost money in FTX are made whole because of, moonshot investments that they made that now look like they may pay off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely too soon to say made whole. I think it's looking increasingly likely that some money, at least, will be recovered. I think you're alluding to Anthropic, which was this kind of moonshot AI investment. There's now, there are rumors, valuations being tossed around in the tens of billions of dollars. The issue is that there's a lot of these assets are not highly traded. So it's sort of hard to know, like, if they started selling them, what would happen to the price, where would they go? And even with a case of Anthropic, right, you can't just go and sell that stake on the open market. A lot of this stuff will take a long time to unwind. The economy can change, and so on. The other thing is, the question of whether or not investors can be made whole isn't really relevant to Sam Bankman-Fried's.
It's not relevant, but yeah. I mean, Matt Levine has written about, if you defraud somebody and that person never gets her money back, you're going to be in trouble. But if you defraud someone and she does get her money back, it's going to be less bad, right?
Yeah, and perhaps that'll impact how Sam Bankman-Fried's legacy is perceived and so on. I don't think it's going to have an impact on this case because, again, the jury isn't hearing this stuff, And again, the charges are: did Sam Bankman-Fried take customer money and gamble it? The fact that you gambled it and maybe won doesn't necessarily, address the central allegation. And again, there are other allegations here. We're going to have a second trial around campaign finance violations. That stuff can, he could go to jail for a long time. There's the Chinese bribery allegations. So there's a bunch of...
These are separate trials?
There are 2 separate trials, yes.
So what's the timeline look like for this one?
So we're going to see Bankman-Fried likely start testifying today. That'll go into tomorrow, probably early next week. I mean, the jury could begin deliberating next week. We could have a verdict as early as next week, although it seems possible it could go on to the...
Are reporters allowed in the courtroom?
Yes.
Okay.
The public is allowed in the courtroom. We have a team of people down there. They've been reporting on this, relentlessly. You can read it on Bloomberg.com at the terminal. General public's also in there. So we've seen kind of a weird rotating list of kind of crypto figures and influencers. I think Martin Shkreli was down there early on. It's sort of been a kind of weird reality show.
Because I mean, this really, to a certain extent, I wonder, crypto, to what extent is this an indictment or of the crypto space? I mean, is it seen that way by people?
Well, I think it depends who you talk to. So you talk to people in the industry, right? They have been very keen, and you've seen the industry really, they have been some of the most aggressive people in calling out Sam Bankman-Fried because they want to make an effort to say, hey, look, this was a bad actor, bad apple, he's making us look bad. I think in the minds of normal investors, in the minds of the public, right, that argument's a little harder because Sam Bankman-Fried, his whole thing was that he was the most law-abiding, least sketchy. I mean, this is a world that has operated kind of on the edges of various laws in all over the world. So again, I think it's really too early to know what the impact is going to be on crypto broadly. And I think some of that has to do with, frankly, the verdict. And depending on what the jury says, I think will affect how people process this.
Dude, you got to think that, just because Bernie Madoff committed a big $65 billion fraud with an investment Ponzi scheme, that's not an indictment of the U.S. stock market and certainly not of the U.S. dollar. Right,
exactly.
Although I could see that because crypto is so difficult to understand and because it's not clear yet whether much or even any of these coins are going to be worth something in 5 or 10 years, people might very easily conflate the two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was an indictment of Ponzi schemes, right? And the crypto critics are gonna essentially say that there are businesses out there that are operating in ways that aren't necessarily that different from the way FTX was operating.
And this guy's facing real jail time, right? What is it?
I mean, he faces a potential life sentence.
Wow.
Effective life sentence.
Yes.
It's going to be so many years that it would be, he would be old or deceased by the time he got out. We don't really know. Of course, there's a wide potential range of potential sentences. You're talking about anywhere from years to decades, and of course he could be acquitted. Whatever happens with this case, I think there are definitely going to be appeals, and there is this second trial, the second criminal trial, which also carries significant jail time.
All right.